Welcome to the Pointing the Wise podcast. Caleb Barker here, just wanting to share some of my thoughts, things that I learned as I went through this process of interviewing the four candidates for city council this year. The first thing I wanted to talk about was as I interviewed these four people, I got the feeling and understanding that I think these candidates, all of them, all four of them, are just regular people who are trying to help. They have an interest in their community and they would like to be able to represent the people of Brigham as laws are being passed and as we are choosing the direction of where our city will go. I do believe that all of them are trying to help and that they have good intentions. I do also think that those who are seeking to be elected are looking to are currently two of them are currently serving, and the other two are looking to provide real service. The monetary incentive for being on city council is basically nil, and that it is a real sacrifice of their time for the benefit of the people who live in this community. I don't see that there are any malicious intent there as far as getting kickbacks from different organizations, that kind of stuff. I believe that they're required to report that stuff. So any payments from other organizations or that kind of thing, I believe, are required to be put on the conflict of interest designation, that kind of stuff. So I didn't see any of that. I'll admit that I do still have some suspicions that there might be something that I'm missing, but that's all. They're suspicions. And I think that serious accusations require serious evidence. And if you have any such evidence, I would love to hear that. If you want to message me on my Facebook page, or I think my email address is appointingthewise@proton.me, I believe is that what that is. I'd love to hear it. If you have something that will feed these suspicions and you think that maybe I am being naive and that there's just good intents here, please share that with me. If you've got evidence, I would love to share that. I think that that's important. If it's not there, then I think it's important to give them the benefit of the doubt. So there's that, right? If what do they call that? Outlandish claims or accusations of, I don't know, just to say again, serious accusations require serious evidence. I think that the candidates and current members do want to talk to us and they're very approachable. I found it very easy to get in touch with Councilman Jensen and Councilman Smith. And again, those who are running, they wanted to have, I think, a place to voice their thoughts and why you should elect them. But that even those who are currently elected have tried to make themselves readily available to those who have thoughts or complaints, and that we should reach out to them, that we should be civil, and that we should seek first to understand what they have to say, and then and we can, to not come at it like they're like these evil people who are trying to do grave injustices, but rather to go towards them and say, hey, this is a thought that I have. Here's a concern that I have. Help me understand. And if not, then maybe these changes need to take place. I know that if you're like me, I didn't have any understanding. One of the biggest things I learned from this is that I really don't know what they're doing, what's going on. And I think that it's not helpful to assume that they are acting maliciously, but that if you're just like me, you're just starting and you don't know what's going on yet. So doing that research beforehand or understanding, being humble as you go to and approach them, I think would be worthwhile. Let's see here. Probably the biggest thing, one of the biggest things that I wanted to point out is that I know who I'm going to vote for. I know with absolute clarity, who I think is the best candidate to represent me, the candidates to represent me. And barring some crazy revelation of, I I don't think that that's going to change. But if there was something that came out about the ones that I was going to vote for, then maybe I would consider changing. But barring that, I know who I'm going to vote for, and I know that if my choices don't win, that I'm not worried about the future of our community still. One of the biggest things that I learned is that more important than who we've elected is communicating to them and holding them accountable, is going to city council meetings, is emailing or calling or meeting with them in person to let them know where we stand so that they can represent us. If they don't know what we have to say or what our thoughts are, then it's hard for them to represent us. And we should try to make that as easy as possible for them. I did want to point out that as far as editing goes in these podcasts that I've been doing, really the only thing I've been taking out is dead space. There may be a few things here or there, but nothing big has been left out of our conversations. It's just taking out ums and dead space so that it's easier to listen to on podcast. I know that it can be kind of grating to hear people say every 5 seconds, and admittedly, that's a big chunk. My fault. So just wanted to point that out, that editing has been very minimal. I don't know how to do that. I've just used an AI software to pull out the ums and kind of double check what the AI pulled out and maybe put a few things back in. But for the most part, that's been it. So maybe I don't speak as fluidly and the candidates don't speak as fluidly. Um, if you hear them talk and they say a lot more than they did in the podcast, that's because I took it out for your sake. But that's really all that's been taken out. Another thing that I've learned is that there is a disconnect between the city and the people. And I think the city and the school board, which is an issue that needs to be addressed. There may also be a disconnect between the state and our city as well as our county, right? So county and city, county and state, dang it, state and city, county and city, and then the people and the school board. And so we really need to improve those lines of communication where we can. And I think that this podcast may be a means for improving that a little bit so that people know what's going on in a more easy to access way. I wanted to provide a special thanks to Phil Ziesness. Uh, he's he's the one who kind of really helped me get this going, and he was very gracious. I gave him an opportunity. His podcast is about 35 minutes compared to almost an hour for everybody else. And I told him, I was like, man, I feel like you got robbed. Like I was just barely learning how to do all of this stuff, and you were willing to just meet with me. He said that he didn't need me to give him another episode to catch up. He thought that it was is good enough and that he was able to represent his thoughts and ideas. So I thought he was very gracious there. I didn't know what I was going to ask him on another episode, but I gave him the option. He's like, no, I think we're good. I appreciate it though. I do want to talk about how I got started with this. I think I think it's helpful. I think it's interesting. And I just kind of want to tell my story for a second. I was on the train to go to work in the morning and I was reading through the scriptures in the Book of Mormon. And there's a part of the Book of Mormon where they have a king. And then the next person in line to be king is the son of the king. And him and his brothers decide to go on missions to serve and to spread the gospel to a people that are antagonistic towards them. So none of them want to take the spot as a king. I think the king had some special information, some records of other peoples who were ruled by kings and some of the follies of what kings' wickedness can come from unrighteous kings. So he took this as an opportunity to change the form of government that after him, it would be an elected type government, that there would be judges that were elected, chosen by the voice of the people to represent them. And as he brought this to pass, he mentioned that we should be wise and that we should elect wise men or choose wise men to essentially rule and to govern over the people. And as I was reading that, I was like, I don't know how to pick wise men to make decisions for our government on any level. In a lot of cases, I don't have a lot of information. So I need to get more information. And as I looked, I just couldn't find anything. But it came to my mind that I could at least interview people, and I could, worst case scenario, I've got a phone that has a camera and a microphone on it, and I could post that to YouTube, and that it would probably be beneficial for other people to know what's going on. So I did just that. I found a software that made it easy to kind of edit and maybe add a little bit more value there, or make it more palatable, I guess. And so I did just that. Again, Phil was my guinea pig, and I learned a bunch there about letting them talk and having more of a conversation. But that was why I decided to do it, and I'm hopeful that that I can provide more information about our city council, about the county commissioner. I don't even know what that guy does. So understanding that more, and then maybe even looking into state elections and federal. So I would like to work with maybe people on city council to get more palatable notes that are more easy to access and understand what's going on each meeting. Interview all the current members of the city council. I do think that there's a lot of us who, myself included, up until a couple of weeks ago, that want to complain about what they're doing, but haven't really taken the time to understand where they're coming from. And I didn't know where to start. And it turns out I think the place to start is having a conversation with them in person. So I'd like to do some of that. Like I said, interviewing maybe county, state, and federal officials as elections come up next year. There's a lot of those. Maybe even work with people from other cities to kind of mimic what I've done here, hopefully and better, and maybe create a network there that I think could be interesting. And then I would like to look at maybe some important principles of our country's founding about its Christian roots and maybe bring that in some capacity. Those are directions that I think I could take the podcast. I'm hopeful. If you have thoughts, let me know. I'd really like input on here. I do want this to be useful. I don't know that I'll get rich or famous off of this, but I think that if I can do some good, this is an avenue that I feel like I'm naturally inclined to. Let me know if you have any ideas that you think would be helpful. Another thing that I thought was important is we need to understand the ways that we can get involved. Joining or starting a group is mentioned in my interview with Christine Nielsen, that if you have, something that you would like to do in the community and that exists, join that group, the Rotary Club or Kiwanis Club or anything like that, doing some service, going to church, like getting more involved in your church, whichever church that is, or just starting a group, maybe it's chess club, maybe it's, I don't know, Pokemon club or something. I don't know. But if it's something that you're interested in, building that camaraderie and that community with your fellow Brighamites, then I think that's worthwhile and can really help our community. I think that would be beneficial to follow the city Facebook page, look at their site or their app, and stay up to date on that. And again, if you have questions or would like clarification, I'm happy to kind of do that groundwork and work with the team to do that. If I feel like I've opened that door, and I'm happy to go down that path. You can read the agenda. As I was talking with Councilman Jensen, their meeting prep notes, I don't remember what he called those, are available to everybody. We can read through those. And again, that's something I would like to go through and again, make more public and more accessible to the public. Show up to community events. There are a lot of events in our community that we can get to know each other and go be around each other and do service and that kind of thing. As mentioned earlier, go to church. I have one in mind, but if you don't want that one, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, there are lots of other great churches in our community. And if they are bringing you closer to your Savior, and I think that's worthwhile, and helping you, read and understand the Bible and the Word of God, I think that's great. One thing that I wanted to bring up is I was reading a talk the other day called Love Takes Time. And I think that this quote really helps drive this point home that we can. Sorry, I'm trying to find it right now. Here we go. So he's just talking about how love takes time. He says, love of God takes time. Love of family takes time. Love of country takes time. Love of neighbor takes time. Love of companion takes time. Love in courtship takes time. And love of self takes time. And if we don't take times for these things, then those relationships really deteriorate. And so the part that stood out to me because of this is the love of country, love of community takes time. And we really are only going to get out of it what we put into it. And so I invite you to do more of that, to see how you can be a greater part of this community moving forward. And if we want to have our liberties, our freedoms, then we have to take up the responsibility to stand up for those liberties and to make sure that they are being protected. At the end of this, I did want to bring up some thoughts here about some of the interviews that I had and thoughts that came up to me after the fact. Multiple candidates at city council and then even on the podcast had mentioned that our kids will need to live somewhere, talking about the high density housing and the apartments that are going up all over Brigham. And it's like, well, if I want my kids to live near me in the future, they have to live somewhere, and apartments provide that opportunity. Is that, there's only so many people can live in a certain area. After the fact, I realized that building apartments doesn't really solve that problem in the long term. I don't want my kids and grandkids to live in apartments, maybe in the short term, but definitely not in the long term when they finally settle down, hopefully somewhere in Brigham, that it'll be in a home that they own and hopefully a home with a yard in some capacity. But building more apartments doesn't fulfill that need. It builds, well, I don't need to go through all of the issues, but it certainly doesn't resolve that fact. The only way to make housing for families that's more permanent is to build more homes, single family homes, that is. And so I just wanted to address that. I thought that was maybe a logical fallacy. But additionally, if only 20 people care enough to show up to these events that provide input to our city council as far as what they want for the city, I don't think it's crazy to give their thoughts and ideas more weight than those who don't show up. I think that if other people don't care enough to show up, maybe that their opinion doesn't get to be weighted as much. The only contradiction to that might be that those who on city council are themselves citizens of the city, and so their voice should definitely have weight as well. And if they disagree with what the 20 are saying, then I guess then that's probably fair that that's brought into it. And obviously they might have more understanding of some of those things. But if that's the case, or if they have additional information that those 20 need, then they should be made aware that, hey, I think I hear what you're saying, but here's some things you may not understand. And so I guess all of that to say is I don't think we should discount those 20 because they are only 20. I think the opposite might be more warranted, is to give their thoughts more weight because they're the only ones who to show up. So that was just one thing that a couple of things that I had thought of after having done the interviews. I appreciate you listening. Please give this a like, a thumbs up, and subscribe. The more that I see that, the more motivated I am to to go out and to do more of these interviews. You've already heard what my plans are. And so, again, thanks for the support, and we'll talk to you later. Cheers.